I hope my internet will be well today. I will start the recording.
Okay. All right. So welcome back to another CryptoVagabonds Q&A. So this week we're going to be talking about the Bitcoin on the White House. So let's get Ross is joining us. Let me get my presentation ready for you guys. Dun, 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 dun. Yes. Elections in the US are approaching, so we need to figure out what the candidates are thinking, what are their ideas, what are the possible actions they will take in the future. So today we're going to show to you guys the different approach from the different political parties in the US. Even though there are different political parties, there is only two parties that has a chance to ever win, which is the Democrats or Republicans. So I think this is the most significant election in the US or in the world for the century. So let me just get my thing going. Oh, maybe I have to change this because there's an audio. Just give me a second, guys. I need to move this back here because there's an audio on this. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. So it has to be here. All right, then let me do this. Back to Zoom. I'm start sharing my screen. Welcome, Ross, Rob, Amelia. Let me know when you can see my screen.
It's coming up. Yeah, we can. It's all good.
All right. So let me start by saying that whatever we say here, whatever content we produce, is never to be taken as financial tax or legal advice. All the content we create through all the platforms are just for information, education, and entertainment purpose only. And once again, welcome to the CryptoVagabonds Q&A. This Q&A occurs every Wednesday at 1 p.m. EST. You can also interact with us in Clubhouse, Tuesday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, or of course here on YouTube, Instagram, or X. Now, today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin in the White House. So there's a chance that there's already Bitcoiners within the White House. So the roadmap of today, we're going to be talking about crypto's influence on presidential elections. Those who are users of crypto, those who like crypto or have invested in crypto, how they can influence or which direction to vote if they want to choose a candidate that is more pro cryptocurrencies. We're also going to be looking at the political parties' instance of crypto, what the Democratic Party thinks and what they intend to do in terms of cryptocurrencies. And then in the end, of course, we're going to be giving the conclusion and my thoughts on the matter. So cryptocurrency has actually made to become an issue or something to be mentioned among candidates regarding election. And it became so significant that now it's becoming a polarizing subject when it comes to voting. We see a lot of posts on social media, such as X, where people are saying, listen, if you care for cryptocurrencies and so on, consider voting for this person. So this is how big Bitcoin has become since its creation in 2009. So voters are now looking at the different ways in which they can vote. And of course, they're looking for ways in which it's better for their assets, it's better for their cryptocurrencies. So there's also people in the industry trying to influence candidates. Major crypto firms such as Ripple Labs, Coinbase, Andreessen Horowitz, they're investing on political campaigns to support pro-crypto candidates, not just on Senate level or government level, but now on the presidential campaign as well. So crypto giants are getting together and they're trying to find ways to support candidates that will favor cryptocurrencies or offer better regulations or more clear regulations on cryptocurrencies. So let's look at both political parties and see which one has a better instance towards cryptocurrencies. The first political party, of course, is the actual president and the vice president, Kamala Harris. Now, the Biden administration has always originally been against cryptocurrencies. They have regulations that are not favorable to cryptocurrencies. We also have a letter from the Biden administration asking Gary Gensler not to approve any more ETFs. Not to mention that some Democrats are also in alliance with Elizabeth Warren. So such regulations that Biden has done, one of them is trying to create taxation for miners. Mining is already very challenging without tax, and they're now trying to create the digital asset mining energy, which means they want to tax those who are working with mining. Now, the mining of Bitcoin alone consumes about 0.5% of all electricity on the planet. So it's a very heavy consumption of electricity. You can see here, the Biden administration proposed 30% tax on electricity used by Bitcoin miner. Now, it's important to understand that Bitcoin mining is not harmful to the environment because it uses mostly electricity that the industry wants to use anyway, but that's another subject for another video. Now, they also support an operation called Choke Point 2.0. And that operation is aiming to limit crypto access to traditional finance. And of course, if you cannot get your banking to give you access to crypto assets or to transfer money to exchanges, that drains the liquidity or drains capital in the industry. So that is one operation that the Democrats has been supporting, which is to stifle cryptocurrencies, not to mention the banks that they closed down because those banks are supporting cryptocurrencies. So obviously, after Donald Trump spoke at the Bitcoin event, now they're shifting their position. They're saying that cryptocurrency adopters or users are not in favor of regulations against cryptocurrency. So now the Democratic Party has shifted their position. Now they don't have that very strong narrative we're against. They are indecisive, not speaking or talking about possible resetting their relationship with the crypto industry. Now, ETF approvals we got this year. And as I mentioned, the Biden administration specifically sent a letter trying to prevent the approval of the Ethereum ETF. So today we have in the US 2 ETFs being approved, the Bitcoin ETF and the Ethereum ETF. Now, here we have Kamala Harris choosing her vice president, which is Tim Walz. Now, Tim Walz is not in favor of cryptocurrency. And Kamala Harris has not spoken positive or negatively. She's just talking about resetting the relationship between the administration and cryptocurrency. So it's very unclear. She's not trying to take an instance, and I can see why, because if she speaks negatively or saying that the instance is going to be harsh, she may lose those voters. So to me, she not being clear about cryptocurrencies is just a trick for her to not upset those who are adopters or users of cryptocurrencies or investors in cryptocurrencies. So you can see here that some in the crypto industry see this change positively, while people like me are skeptical, and they see this as a political rather than a genuine commitment to supporting digital assets, not to mention they do support CBDCs. Now, that is on the Democratic Party. Now, we also have Kennedy. And to me, he's, in my view, a bit too optimistic because he has investment in cryptocurrencies before. He has his own investment in Bitcoin. And he's talking about, and he also criticizing the 2 presidents, Trump and Biden, in terms of the regulations to cryptocurrency. And remember, Donald Trump was not in favor of cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin, in the beginning, but I think he has changed his view now, especially after being invited to speak at the Bitcoin conference. So Kennedy criticized both Donald Trump and Biden. Now, he has a few proposals that I think is very problematic or concerning to me. He proposed placing the entire budget on the blockchain to ensure transparency and public oversight, allowing American population to scrutinize the government spending. It seems like a very beautiful idea. We have spoken about this in Clubhouse many times. It is not possible, because if you do that, that means your enemies also have access to that transparency, and they can see how much money is going to which facilities, especially when it comes to defense. That is not possible. It sounds very beautiful, but I don't think it's possible. Maybe some of that budget, yes, but not all budget. Now, one thing which is positive about him is that he opposes central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. And of course, CBDCs, besides being very inefficient, they are a surveillance tool. It's a way for the government to control and make sure that they know everything you spend your money on. So that's a positive thing to be opposing CBDC. And another thing which I find positive about him is the fact that he advocates for backing the US dollar with Bitcoin to stabilize the currency and integrate with digital assets. Now, this seems to be a very good idea. However, it doesn't really work in the world of today, because then you have the currency war. If the dollar keeps its value and other currencies start to lose their value, the US has very difficult time exporting their goods. We saw this happening with Switzerland. Switzerland left the gold standard. They depegged their currency from gold because they had a currency which was too strong in Europe. And they did that in 1999. And they're still struggling today with a very strong currency. Switzerland are actually intentionally printing more of their currency and trying to inflate the currency because it doesn't work well for them to have a too strong currency. So if the US dollar does this, it will have different consequences. A lot of people talk about a strong dollar. In the world of today, if the US decides to do that, they need to be prepared for the consequences. Same thing with petrol. They're the largest producer of petrol. However, that also carry consequences such as them not being able to purchase as much from Saudi Arabia, and now Saudi Arabia having other bigger clients who have larger voice on petrol. So even though we all advocate for a very strong currency, a strong dollar, we need to be prepared for the consequences of that. So he's also facing a lot of scrutiny over his personal Bitcoin investment, and he may have, of course, a potential conflict of interest because he himself is heavily invested in cryptocurrencies, not heavily, but invested in cryptocurrencies. Now, those are the two candidates, Biden, the Democrats, and Kennedy. Now let's look at Donald Trump. And remember, in the beginning, he was against cryptocurrency. You can see here, I'm not a fan of Bitcoin and crypto. They are highly volatile and based on thin air. It seems like most people go through this path. They heard of Bitcoin, they don't like it, they don't agree with it, they think it's a joke, it's a scam, it's a bubble, and eventually someone opens your eyes to it. So I think that's the same thing with Donald Trump. Someone must have spoken to him and he changed his mind. We saw the same thing happening with Ray Dalio. So in the beginning, he was against it, especially because of the volatility, at least that's what he says. In my view, he was against it because he needs to defend the US dollar. Now, his position has changed, and he believes on cryptocurrency, at least that's the position he has taken. His vice president is also invested in cryptocurrency, and he sees that Bitcoin has gained mainstream acceptance, and it seems like he has ideas to create policies which are more in favor of cryptocurrency. He was also the first ex-president and candidate to speak at a Bitcoin conference, and that was in Nashville, I think about a month ago or a few weeks ago. He spoke at a Bitcoin conference. So now he's pro-cryptocurrency. He also pledged that he will do whatever he can to make sure that the US becomes a main market for cryptocurrency and also a symbol or a leading country in terms of the crypto industry. So he also acknowledged that there is a significant consumption of electricity, or a lot of electricity needed for the mining of Bitcoin. Now, he speaks, I don't think he can deliver, but he promised to also make sure that the US produce a lot of electricity. Unlike Biden, Biden defends the ESG. Donald Trump is not pro-ESG, he's pro-fossil fuels. So here is a little snaps of the speech that he gave at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville.
Surrender our industries to no one, to no one. You know, some of you are involved with AI, but you also have the same thing. You need a thing called electricity. You need a lot of electricity. You know, AI needs to be really dominant, and China can do it much easier. We have environmental impact statements to do, but we're going to do things that nobody thought were possible. You need tremendous amounts of electricity. You need double the electricity of the entire electricity that we have right now in the United States to dominate. And we'll get that done. Who would think we can get that done? But we're going to get it done. We'll be having power plants built at the sites. We'll be releasing people from certain ridiculous requirements. And we'll be using fossil fuel to make electricity because we're going to have to. We'll be using nuclear. We'll be doing it in an environmentally friendly way. But we will be creating so much electricity that you'll be saying, please, please, President, we don't want any more electricity. We can't stand it. You'll be begging me, no more electricity, sir. We have enough. We have enough.
Now, in my view, I already spoke about this. ESG is very problematic, especially when it comes to the geopolitics, and it's also not that green. One example I can give to you guys is the Tesla automobile. Once the Tesla arrives at the store where you can buy it, they already pollute as much as another car equivalent that has run for about 150,000 miles. So it's just cleaner on the one end, the consumer end, but it produces a lot of waste. Also, there's an issue with the batteries. After they drive for 150,000 miles, you have to change the batteries. So the ESG does not work, is not reliable. We cannot heat our houses. We cannot rely on green electricity. So we have to go to fossil fuels. So unlike Biden, when he says, I promise you, kiddo, we're going to fade away from fossil fuels. Germany have tried that. It did not work. So for better or for worse, no matter what you think, we need fossil fuels. And in that sense, I do agree with Donald Trump. So he spoke on the Congress and he clarified that he would create friendlier and transparent regulations for the crypto industry. Here's another snap of what he spoke on the conference.
We will keep each and every Bitcoin job in the United States of America. That's what we're going to be doing. Upon taking office, I will immediately appoint a Bitcoin and Crypto Presidential Advisory Council. Would anybody like to be on that particular council? Please raise your hand. Their task will be to design transparent regulatory guidance for the benefit of the entire industry, and they will get it done in 100 days. We will have regulations, but from now on, the rules will be written by people who love your industry, not hate your industry, people that want to make it clear and simple, straightforward and fair, people that want to see your industry thrive, not dive.
So it's very clear that he expressed that he will support cryptocurrencies. He's also talking about a US-backed stablecoin. And I think that would be great if the Federal Reserve can actually create or support a specific stablecoin. That would work, I think, wonders for the industry. And of course, we have to keep in mind what kind of blockchain they would use and how much monitoring would be occurring. But if the Federal Reserve supports or endorses any stablecoin that doesn't have to be issued by them, that gives a security that, for instance, you don't have a case as the Terra Luna stablecoin. So he also talked about taking all the Bitcoins that has been already confiscated by the government and use those to be hodled for the government and not ever to be sold. Normally, when the authorities confiscate something, eventually those items go into auction. He's saying, no, Bitcoins that have been confiscated will be part of the treasury, will belong to the government, and the government will be holding those Bitcoin and not selling them. So that's one other thing that he has said. Also, he vowed to fire Gary Gensler, and he has issues with Gary Gensler. And the one thing which is positive is not just Donald Trump, who doesn't like Gary Gensler. His vice president also doesn't like Gary Gensler. And they also talk about making sure that there's never a CBDC on America, the same way that there is a CBDC in China. They say CBDCs will not be existing in the US if he becomes a president, which seems that he's pro self-custody. Now, let's look at the two vice presidents for the two candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. So Tim Walz is a Democrat, and he has been chosen to be the vice president for Kamala Harris. Now, he has been the governor of Minnesota from 2019 to 2024, and he had a long career in public service, including serving the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, he has, as serving the House of Representatives, approved laws that I'm not pro. I already mentioned that to you guys. I don't want to talk about that here, but he's not a person who is pro cryptocurrencies. He stands against cryptocurrencies and he's pro CBDC. So he's known for his negative approach towards cryptocurrencies, and he's advocating for stricter regulations, and he wants to make sure that traditional market does not get overtaken by cryptocurrencies. And of course, we don't want fraud, we don't want abuse, we don't want all the scams that are happening in the crypto space, but that's part of it. The same thing happened to the internet. When the internet came into existence, it was used by mostly criminals, pornography, and so on. That is just the way things occur. And it's not just the internet. The automobile, the same thing. When the automobile was invented, it was mainly used by criminals. Now, he is in alliance with Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler. So as a vice president, is not pro cryptocurrency. And you can see here, Tim Walz is the worst pick for Bitcoin. That is what Bitcoiners are saying. He believes that the US government should implement stricter regulations around the use of cryptocurrency. Now, one thing that I find questionable here is, and he doesn't support the idea of classifying cryptocurrency as a legal form of payment. Now, for those who are in the US and for those who are outside the US has one thing in particular. You can demand and use any form of payment. You do not have to accept the US dollar. Like, for instance, countries in South America, such as Brazil, you cannot refuse the Brazilian real. That is a legal tender. And also, is beyond the legal tender, is a forced tender. In the US, it's not a forced tender. It's just legal tender. You may accept or don't accept the US dollar. So once they talk about not allowing or accepting Bitcoin as a legal form of payment, they're trying to change the US Constitution, because the US dollar, once again, you have the right to refuse that as a form of payment, and you can accept anything as a form of payment. To try to make cryptocurrencies not a legal form of payment is trying to go against the constitutions and the laws of the United States of America. So another thing that I find very problematic with this vice president is his instance on energy. He's pro ESG. So he has received donations from FTX and he returned them. But you can see here, while it is uncertain if Walz is a fan of cryptocurrency, he has shown a solid commitment to energy policy, which means he wants his state to be fully green by 2040. Now, we already see what happened here in Germany. Green energy does not work. It cannot replace fossil fuel energy. If you guys want to find out more about that, I believe there's at least one video that I have made about that. Link for that will be on the description for you guys, on the description below. Now, let's look at another US candidate, the one for vice president. In this case, Vance. Now, he was born in a middle town in Ohio, and he grew up struggling on the Rust Belt town. Now, there is a movie about him and his infancy and his childhood on Netflix. He also has written a book, and I believe the movie on Netflix is based on that book. So he struggled a lot as a kid, and he had to work really hard to get where he is right now. And he did not like Donald Trump. But then he became a Republican. He started to interact more, find out more about Donald Trump. He became more of a friendly person towards Donald Trump. And today, he's his vice president. But he has been part of the US Senate in Ohio, and he became known for his populist views, which is not a good one, but I think he's changing as he gets exposed to more, I would say, Austrian School of Economics approach and capitalists around him. So he agrees with Trump in terms of America First agenda. He has expressed support for the adoption of cryptocurrencies. Once again, he owns Bitcoin himself. He is investing in cryptocurrency himself. So I believe that he will be supporting genuinely cryptocurrencies, and he sees cryptocurrencies as a financial innovation and an instrument to empower the individual. So I think he's getting more and more exposed to the Austrian view of Austrian economics, view in terms of like the sovereignty of the individual, how important it is for you to be empowered, and how money should work for the individual, not for the state. So I believe he's going to continue being influenced by the Austrian School of Economics, and I believe him to be genuinely trying to promote or getting favorable regulations to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Now, I already mentioned he has already invested in cryptocurrencies, and he's very vocal about the potential of blockchain technology. We also have a clip of him speaking on his view of cryptocurrencies. Let's listen to that.
If there's a candidate for worst person, in my view, at least in terms of my substantive disagreements, I'm sure he's like a nice guy, is Gary Gensler. Okay, so Gary Gensler is sort of the complete opposite of my view. And there are two problems that I have with Gary. One of which is that I think he wants to inject politics way too much into the actual business of securities in the United States of America. But in some ways, the more fundamental issue, or at least the most relevant issue for this particular conference is the approach that Gary has taken to regulating blockchain and crypto seems to be almost the exact opposite of what it should be. And I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but the question the SEC seems to ask in regulating crypto is this a token with utility? And if it's a token with utility, then they seem to want to ban it. And if it's a token without utility, they don't seem to care. I almost think we should be the opposite here, right? I worry about financialization. I worry about, frankly, whether a lot of the crypto stuff is fundamentally fake. But if a token actually has utility, that's the sort of thing that, by all means, regulate it. By all means, be careful about, how consumers interact with it. But you don't want to just get rid of this stuff. And here's where I really, really worry about this is a lot of the newest challengers to the social media incumbents of 2024 are going to require some blockchain technology to make their business work. Maybe they'll require a token that supports verification. There are all of these ways in which the companies, when I talk to sort of friends who are still in the VC industry, the companies that are most exciting to them, they're doing actual things in communications in the 21st century, in 2024, I should say, those companies very often rely on high utility tokens to do things like verification. Well, if we're not making it possible to do verification, then we're going to make it really hard to challenge the existing incumbents in the space.
So that is one of his views, and I agree with him totally. So, conclusion. I think cryptocurrencies will drive votes in one direction or another. So to me, all the major political parties, they see how crucial it is to have at least a not negative approach when it comes to cryptocurrencies. Now, the Republicans have made very clear that they are pro cryptocurrencies. The Democrats are trying to take a doubtful instance, not a clear one. And in my view, if there's a doubt, there's no doubt. So as a Bitcoiner and as someone who endorses cryptocurrencies, again, I'm not an American. I have no horse in this race, but I have a concern because whatever approach the US takes, it is very likely that the other countries will follow. So I, for one, I want to see a Republican as a president, and I want to see favorable laws for cryptocurrencies because I believe whatever laws the US take, other countries will follow. I'm very disturbed, especially by the vice president of Kamala Harris. And it seems like if she's get elected, at least that's my view, I don't know the future, but in my view, we're going to have very negative approach for cryptocurrencies. And I keep saying, if you are in Canada or in the US, or even in Europe for that matter, if you are in the West and you believe, if you're a Bitcoiner in the West and you believe you're not going to be at odds with your government, I would take that, give that a second thought. I do believe there's very likely that people who own cryptocurrency, who have self-custody, they will be at the odds with their government, especially if we have a more socialist and a more totalitarian regime. That's my view from outside. I'm open to a debate. I'm open to it proven wrong, but that's my view. So as a Bitcoiner, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that we have a Republican president this time. I'm not sure it's going to happen. A lot of things have to happen still. There's a lot of water to go under that bridge. But I think I, for one, prefer a Republican. So we cover, I think, very basically and very quickly the crypto's influence on the presidential elections. I give a view very briefly on the political candidates and where they stand on cryptocurrency, and I gave you guys my final thoughts. So with this, I will go back to you guys, and if you want to be in control of your own money and you want to find out more about cryptocurrencies and be able to enter the space safely, consider joining the Academy. Link for that in the description below. And now I stop, and I'll be here answering you guys' questions or open for the discussion whether or not a Republican or Democratic president will be better for cryptocurrencies. So here we have, and what a full house while I was making the presentation. So I think this has been, go ahead.
My opinion is that they need to get a Republican in there to start straightening things up, because we've seen what's happened with the Democrats, right? And they're just going to get worse. They're just going, to me, they look like they're going off the cliff. Very much the same with Trudeau. He needs to get out, because all he's doing is bring us toward globalization and destroying our country. And no one's happy with what's going on in Canada. All of us in the middle class are really feeling it and hurting and losing the wealth that we have worked so hard. So he's basically, a puppet of the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab. And Klaus Schwab did state, that he has penetrated Trudeau's cabinet. Half of them are globalists that belong to his school of thought.
Yeah. I had a video I think I made on YouTube where Klaus Schwab also mentions Trudeau, Merkel, and the people that has been formed by his school. So I think I have posted on YouTube before. Yeah. So
I've seen that. Most of the leaders now are part of his globalist school, if you do the background check. So we're in big trouble unless something changes. Yeah. I think the only one that can change it is Trump, quite frankly. I'll just leave that. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think like is the best option. I just mentioned a woman that I believe would be better than Trump and better than Kamala Harris, but unfortunately, those are not the candidates we have. I think Tulsi Gabbard is a great option. But I see Roz rose her hand, and again, I'm talking about from an outsider. I have no knowledge, and there's no much experience. What is the issues for the domestic circumstances for those in America? So, Roz, go ahead.
Thank you. If you're a single issue voter and Bitcoin is the most important thing to you, then it's an easy decision. If you're not, it gets more complicated. I think what is unfortunate is that the divide is so toxic, where what I would like to see happen, and in any situation on this topic, let's say specifically of Bitcoin and crypto, if there are Republicans where this is very important, bring together some education, because again, when people fear what they don't understand. And so the best strategic move, in my opinion, would be stop attacking the Democrats and start educating the Democrats. Because at the end of the day, at this point, we don't know who's going to win, right? It's easier to pass legislation when you have a bipartisan Congress. And so I would hope that there are some Republicans who can get past this one-sidedness and the division, who's really trying to educate, I'll say, the Democrats, including Kamala Harris and, her VP pick. That would be the ideal situation. But as long as you're spewing hatred, negative, comment, no, who wants to hear that? No, I'm not going to hear you, because you come across as an enemy, right? And so I'm not going to even be open to the conversation. And so ideally on this issue, of Bitcoin, I hope that there are some Republicans who are thinking strategically and wise enough to say, hey, can we sit down and have a conversation? Can I explain to you, what Bitcoin is, what cryptocurrency is, and the value it brings, and how even you yourself can benefit from it. Explain to them what happens to them, how it has a personal impact, you know, on them and their future generations. Because again, people don't know. If you've never been in this space, if you're hearing it for the first, it is scary. You do see all the scams, right? That's what we see in media. So I can understand when people are resistant to it. And so I would hope that again that people are at least trying to bridge the gap, whether it's Bitcoin or anything else, because if it's better for the country, there has to be conversation, meaningful conversation and education in order
Yeah,
for things to
Ro
change.
Booth,
wait,
can
just a
I?
second, just
Oh,
just,
oh,
just
okay,
a
go
second.
ahead.
I just want to say something on a big. So I just want to make sure we're talking about Bitcoin, right? And to me, it's not about one single issue, right? I didn't want to mention the law that Walt approved, which is against family, because it's not like in line with our discussion. But to me, Ross, as an outsider, there are certain issues that are more significant than others. So I'm going to give an example to you as in Brazil. Brazil, we had two candidates. And again, I think the West has this situation where there's no good candidate. You just have to choose between the least worst. That's my view from like what I see in Brazil. I see that happening here in Europe. And so to me, there's some issues that are more significant than others. So for instance, in Brazil, we had Bolsonaro versus Lula, right? Now, Bolsonaro said two issues that made me feel like, okay, my brother called me and say, my brother was a brilliant gesture. He's like, listen, I have the right to vote. I don't feel like I'm capable of taking this decision. So tell me who to vote for, right? And I was like, okay, thank you for that gesture. But for instance, Bolsonaro says, you guys can have your weapons. I'll make it easier for you guys to have your weapons. Like, wow, if a government wants me to be armed, I'm less afraid of that government than the government wants to take my arms away from me. So if the government wants me to have means to defend myself, I'm like, okay, it seems to be a single issue, but it's a very significant issue to me. Like, it's not like, for instance, oh, can we have a gay holiday? Like, if you're voting for you to have a gay holiday versus being able to bear arms, I would say bearing arms have a higher stake on that. So to me, Bitcoin is about private property, how much you respect my rights to property. And I agree with you. I'm not trying to promote the divide, but I also see from the Democratic Party, and maybe this is just me being tunnel vision, I hope not, they have this thing of censorship. Like, for instance, Donald Trump had a conversation with Elon Musk on X. And Elon Musk says, not an interview, just to have a conversation. I think it was like 2-hour conversation. And there were threats on Elon Musk. And here in Europe, for instance, not the Democrats in America, but here in Europe, the left wing talk about censoring X here in Europe. So I see that the left tends to be pro censorship and shutting down information that is not in alignment with them. So my question is, how can that education come when it seems to be that that's the pillar that is sit on, which is censoring other people? I'm not saying it's all the Democrats, of course. I'm not saying it's every individual that is supporting Democratic. But you see my point, Ross? And then I want to
Yes,
also
I
hear your
do.
business.
I do see your
I'm
point.
not trying to insult. I'm trying
No,
to
it's
just
not insulting at all. I
okay. I'm not trying to
appreciate it. And
trigger. Okay.
no, this
Okay.
is the conversation that needs to be had. And my point was whether it's Bitcoin or any other issue, right? Because this is the thing. It's just like Okay, I'm not trying to trigger anyone with this comment. This is just an example on the point of abortion. And with some states that are taking away the rights of abortion for whatever reason, right? There have been some women who are Republican, right? Who understood the severity of those laws because it affected them personally. It wasn't until it hit home that they understood that, yeah, some of this language in these laws need to change. And also, there needs to be, in terms of even privacy and the right to make decisions. Again, I'm not talking about abortions for birth control. I'm talking about women who wanted their babies, right? And the babies weren't viable and their lives were at risk, and the medical issues that faced, and that, for example. There are some Republican women and families who see differently now only because it affected them personally. So this is what I'm saying, is that if we can start to have dialogue and conversations about the reality, not the idealistic views that that we would like to see on either side, whatever it is, but with the reality that of issues we face because of our humanity, because of technology, because of different religious views. You see what I'm saying? Those are things many times that get in the way, and we vote for things because we haven't considered how it might affect us or our lineage, right? Because we've become so close-minded to hearing other people, to hearing people that disagree, and with arguing instead of attacking, can we sit down and look at, and see how we came to this point, to why we believe what we believe in the first place. That's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
So that's the conversation, no matter what the topic is what I'm trying to say.
And I think that the conversation was there in the past, and now is becoming less and less as we see. Like I have watched previous debates on presidential debates because I'm doing research, and I have seen like debates from before George Bush Jr. and so on. Like it seems like there was a greater degree of understanding, dialogue in the past, and that I think that's being diminishing with time. Alchemist, you want to say something? Go for it. Alchemist, are you there? Or in the gym?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I am.
Sorry,
I
go
am in the
ahead.
gym, but I will I'm in between
Mhm.
sets. So first of all, Roz, I could definitely see that um your intentions are good. And I agree that in a perfect world, that would be the ideal solution, is to talk about it and to discuss it, get more educated on it. The problem is, here's the problem. You have one side that is they have one set of values. You have another side that has another set of values in terms of economics. One side wants economic control, bigger government controlling money. You have another side that wants more freedom economically and more economic loosening, and letting the free market kind of take care of certain things. It's not that the Democrats don't understand crypto. It's not like Kamala Harris. I mean, Kamala Harris is very familiar with cryptocurrency. Gary Gensler is very familiar with cryptocurrency. He taught it at MIT. The problem is that they're most likely. I mean, Kamala Harris is in my opinion, she's playing kind of like innocent slash she's kind of playing dumb in a way of understanding cryptocurrency, because it doesn't align with the democratic values of market. So big government means that the Fed prints money and they can censor money if they don't, if you disagree with the government, basically. In cryptocurrency, specifically with the stuff that like I've been talking about, like Booth had Jupiter and things like this, like anybody can create their own money and then let the free market decide its value from there. And that's the difference there. So it's not necessarily about they're so misinformed that like Republicans need to educate Democrats about crypto. It's that the democratic values do not align with Bitcoin's values. They really don't. And Bitcoin is freedom of money, sovereignty. Nobody can take your money. The government can't censor your money. They can't take it away from you. You have the freedom of doing this. The Democrat values just simply don't. The same way that Republican values typically don't allow for abortion, whereas the Democrats do. They say that freedom. It's more social freedom. That is more of like a social freedom as opposed to an economic freedom. So that's the only thing. I do agree with you that in a perfect world, that would be what it is. However, I think that in this type of thing, it is a very different set of belief systems that are dictating the two parties. And I think that's the disconnect. And I think crypto is more on the economic freedom part. And I think that leans more to the right.
So
Go ahead.
I just make sure I understood. So because I'm not an American, so I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. I want to give the mic to Ross. So on your view, it is like a core issue. It's not like, oh, lack of understanding, lack of knowledge. In your view, it seems to be like it's down to the core values that they base their policies and their ideas on. Is that what you're saying, Alchemist?
Very true. Yeah. It's
okay.
If Bitcoin was like the world, like let's just say Bitcoin was the world reserve currency.
Yeah.
The Democrats just fundamentally would not like that because their beliefs and their and how they want to operate the government, they wouldn't be able to do it. Like they just simply wouldn't.
Okay. I want to hear what Ross wants to say about that, but I think I got a point. Go ahead, Ross.
Okay. I do understand what you're saying and agree. However, I do believe, well, I don't believe, but I know it. There are people on both sides, whether Democrat or Republican, they don't even know why. They're following the crowd. They're doing, my mama was a Democrat, my daddy was a Democrat, our family is a Democrat. That's the only, when I didn't know who to vote for, they told me to vote Democrat, they told me to vote Republican. So there is this blind following. Let me say this as an example. I did not understand Bitcoin until it was explained to me, until I sat in rooms like CryptoVagabonds and was educated on it. I was willing to at least listen to try to understand, if for no other reason, but to know why I'm against it, right? And so and that was, like I said, just a couple of years ago. And I know there are others like me as they become more educated about it. You get to see the greater picture, and it turns into conversation about self-sovereignty. It turns into, conversations about freedom and what that really looks like. It turns into conversations about personal responsibility. And so that's why even long term, if we can change our language and not and so that it's not so not just argumentative, but seen as enemies. There are people who just don't know. It really is their ignorance. It was mine at one point. It was just my ignorance. I had no idea what it was. I heard all this bad stuff about it, but it wasn't until I was educated about it. And so that's the point that, that I am making. It is that education goes a long way, exposure goes a long way. I'm one who benefits, from it, who understands it and gets it. And so I'm one who has become more open-minded to hear and listen with different ears now, as opposed to just opposition and shutting people down. Let me say that, and just saying it's they versus us. So that's all.
No, I 100% agree with you. I was more referring to the policymakers. In terms of the people, I 100% agree. Like I 100% agree with you that people can be misinformed. People can be maybe they just don't understand certain things, and that 100% agree with that. I was more talking about Kamala Harris, Gary Gensler, VP Walls, like those people are very familiar with it. They're not misinformed about it. They know. You know what I mean?
I must admit, like Gary Gensler, for one, knows. I mean, like you say, he taught that on MIT. I also have to say that even though he taught Bitcoin blockchain on MIT, he never owned one single Satoshi, which means that it's a bit controversial. It's like you being a mechanic and never owning a car, right? So to me, it's a bit strange. Like I'm going to teach mechanics, but I never fix a car or had a car. But I think both things are necessary. I think there's a core issue, like for me as an outsider, but I also believe strongly because I have been watching, like I mentioned to you guys, previous debates, previous presidential debates, and the level of civility, the level of ability to really like have a healthy debate and a conversation and to listen to each other. I think like I'm watching the debates between Obama and McCain, and I think from like I mentioned, from George Bush onwards, it seems like that is diminishing, and I think we're coming to a point where there's no longer any ability for anyone to hear the other side. But my question to those who are in the US, and I know it's a Q&A where you guys are supposed to be asking me questions, like, is that just perceivable on the political presidential debates, or that is happening within the country as well, Ross?
In my opinion, it is happening within the country. I'll say the division. How we got here, I don't know. But we are here, and the more, and this is the thing, because again, the political divide, that's all. I'm tired of looking at social media or the news, whatever you turn on, that's all it is, right? And so there is this rhetoric and there is this idea that it's us against them. So until someone is courageous enough and wise enough to start using language and communicating in a way to bring unity, we will always be here. And unfortunately, that's what I have experienced in terms of the divide. That's what I see, that's what I hear. But again, that's my experience. So others, it might be different.
How is for you, Alchemist? Because you're also in the US, how do you see that on your circle?
Yeah, I think like Roz said, I think Roz hit it pretty good, pretty well. I think that it's to the point where there are certain divisions created by media as well as just information, and then on top of that, like I said, values and just your education level on the different topics on both sides. Yeah, I think it's to the point where it's in my in my life personally, like I don't really come across, like I'm not getting into like vicious debates with people all day, like about Republicans versus Democrats or anything like that. But at the same time, I do think that there is a divide where the debates are hostile, and then when there are debates, usually you get censored, or there's some sort of blocking of information of some sort, and whether it be one way or another. I think that a lot of it is over like the media and things like this. Like I have a friend who's a Democrat, and we get into debates all the time, but it's not a crazy like a hostile thing. It really just comes down to, we understand that we just both have different values. You know what I mean? He's a good guy. He's a really good guy. But it comes down to like, it's just a different value system. That's it. But we're friends. Like we're good friends. It's not very typical, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I just find a laughable when we say like he's a good guy, and I think like socially be a good guy, right? I just find that
he means well. He means well. He doesn't know much
yeah.
about economics and stuff like that, but he's a good guy, and I've known him for a while and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's a lot better than he used to be. Let's put it that way.
Bring him tomorrow to the academy. I wanna have a conversation. And I think that what you say there, sorry to cut you off, I think what's important ultimately is like most people mean well. Like I'm yet to find someone who's like, oh, I just want to be evil. I just want to like what I think most people we all agree on the goal. I think the disagreement is in how to get there, right? And also, would the steps I'm taking get me there? Like I think most people mean well. Like even people that I talk who are extreme socialists, I can see that there's this desire within them to do well, to do good, and to be helpful. It's just that I think there's a lack of awareness. Would this way actually be helpful or something like that? Is that what I mean when you say he's a good guy?
Yeah. He's a good guy. Like if my car broke down, he would come and we have each other's back, sort of thing. Our values like don't, we just don't see things the same way. He's more for equality, and it's also partially from the way he grew up too. Like Roz was saying, like his father, his grandfather, big government union people, right? So it's like that's also kind of like that's also a kind of a background. At the same time, like Maria, even though I agree with you from the points that you made, I will say that whether Trump gets into office or not, nobody is solving this problem that is with the debt. All right, like nobody's solving that. Trump can now, like one thing I will say, like I've been paying attention to Donald Trump a lot and what he's been saying. He's not really mentioning like cutting government spending. He's not.
He can't.
He can't. Exactly. There you go. He can't, because if he does, then it's a popularity contest. And number two, he can't because the debt needs to be refinanced and they can't pay it. So Trump is not going to be able to solve the inflation problem. He can now. What he can do is he can take that government spending and spend it on more things productive that can lead to it be going into a better direction. But he's not going to be able to solve all the problems of America. I mean, those problems started in the 80s. Even earlier than that, even.
I think 1914 began.
Yep.
1913 when they created the Federal Reserve. But go ahead.
Correct. Yeah. And the person who's going to solve the inflation problem is you. And that's who's going to solve the inflation problem with, the stuff that, like, that's why, me and Boof and Marcus and all these guys, we're here to, help you solve that problem. No president is going to solve that problem for anybody, whether it be Trump or not. I mean, can the president put it in a positive direction? Yes, but he's not going to solve that debt problem.
I have to push it back, and I want to give the mic to Ross as well. I think what happened is what a president can do is control the speed in which the train will crash, right? More acceleration or less acceleration, not even reducing the speed. It's just diminishing the acceleration that we are in. Like, it's not like taking foot off the gas and pressing brakes. No, the foot's going to be on the gas. The question is how much pressure is on that gas. And I think that's all that the president can do. Like at best, when I'm talking about the president, I'm talking about the government, Federal Reserve, and all the infrastructure that is there. Go ahead, Ross.
Regarding the divide, as most of you, even if you haven't seen me, I'm African American, by the way. So let me say that. That's important to know, because my ancestors are predominantly Democratic, right? Raised voting Democratic Party. I'll be attending a family reunion very soon and I have to keep my mouth closed. I'm not saying a word about anything. So y'all pray for me. But but some people are so beholden to their traditions and the whatever rhetoric that they're hearing, that it doesn't matter, that the minute you challenge any of it, you know, they can be very hostile in some environments. So I'm really hoping for an opportunity to have conversation and to bring up certain topics that are of concern or should be, you know, of concern, to have dialogue, to be able to engage in dialogue. But I think, you know, in situations and in company like this is where we have to think strategically and be intentional if people are willing to listen, or and I'm willing to listen to the other side, where we can, I'll say, make change, where we can actually try to close, you know, that divide even within our own family sometimes, is what I'm saying. And so I am not Democrat nor Republican. I'm not. I have a problem with both sides. That's where I am. That's why it's so hard for me.
Yeah.
I ask me who I'm voting for. I know right now, I really don't know. I can't say. But that's how real the divide is, even within families, is what I would say.
I have seen this here in Europe as well, how this voting thing is dividing families. And I was listening to a speech from a person talking about another research I'm doing is about the voting history. I was looking at the documentations which were required, like what are the requirements for voting. I'm really going far back in this thing, looking at the presidents in the past, but also looking at voting. And it is used to be that was not just men who could vote. Like you had to have property, you had to have a house or X amount of employees in order to be able to vote. And at the time was one vote per household as a way to prevent the divide within the house. And there's some intellectuals who are talking about how giving individual votes is dividing and breaking families. And I think that's something also to be looked at. I have seen a lot of families almost like anger to a level of like almost hating one another, like if that's possible in families because of the different political views. And I'm like, I'm not saying I agree or disagree in terms of should individuals have vote or not, but look at the consequences. And I think that the argument that the guy posed is a very plausible, because I see that divide very strongly among families, though. Yeah, I see that Ross with the thumbs up. We are on a little bit, a few minutes away. Does anyone else have any questions? Raymond, Bushena just joined us, Ilya. Because if not, I'm going to call this a day. And again, I'm not trying to direct anybody's vote. I'm just sharing information with you guys. That is your sovereign right. You vote in the way that you see fit. I'm just sharing information with you guys. I also want to make that disclaimer, though. So.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention, like that's why like you guys are here, right? And that's why me and Boof are doing, like, none of our guys, like we're going to do everything we can to make sure that, you know, you guys who are in the academy and stuff, you guys aren't going to lose to inflation. You guys are going to take the money back and you know, kick inflation's butt. You know what I mean? That's the whole like thing that I'm doing with like the altcoins with you guys and talking about all this stuff and how to maintain your purchasing power and like greatly increase your purchasing power. Not everybody's going to be in that situation, but you know, that's what we're trying to do. Like you guys aren't going to lose to inflation, you know? So
I think it's important to take note, Mia and Cora. Let's make a presentation material about like what is inflation and how it benefits the investors and really hurts the working class, the uneducated people. I think that's something that's important. I see the thumbs up there, because a lot of people think inflation to be this negative thing. But if you know what to do, if you have some kind of financial education, inflation can work for your benefit and not against you. So let's make a presentation about that, what it is and who affects. who gets attacked by it. But anyway, we are almost 10 minutes over time. I have a few other things to do. Appreciate you all. See you guys tomorrow morning, Clubhouse, and for those who are in Academy. Alchemist, try to bring your friends tomorrow to the discussion. I'm going to be inviting some people from Clubhouse tomorrow to the Academy, so we're going to have a discussion about socialism versus capitalism. So see you guys tomorrow there. Appreciate you all. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.